Right, good evening everybody. Some familiar names I can see appearing up on the screen. So welcome everyone to session number 5. In terms of what we're going to be looking at this evening, hey, good, we can hear me, fantastic. In terms of what we're going to be looking at this evening, we've got an exam question that we were looking at last time. I just want to add a few bits to that. Once we've done that, we're going to race our way through the less interesting bits of chapter 4. The exam question is the most important. That's the practical bit of audit planning. We'll go through a few knowledge bits and pieces, nothing too complicated in that. And then we will finish off by starting chapter 5, internal controls. And again, we will be focusing on the most important practical exam areas first, and then we'll worry about the knowledge stuff afterwards. So that is the plan for tonight. Let's have a think. On Friday night we had a little question and answer session just to deal with a few bits and pieces there. Sorted a few people out with a few things. Obviously if any of you have any questions about what we're doing so far, feel free to stick them up on the chat room and we will deal with them. But let us get going by taking a look back at the question from last time. So here it comes. So just a reminder that the question we are looking at here is, did I write this up on here? Well, if we go all the way back there, you can see, look, it is December 2010. And we are looking at question number 3. And the most important part of question number 3 is part C. Why do I say it's important? Well, there are 15 of the 20 marks here. And what we were doing last time was focusing on explaining audit risks and an appropriate response to those risks. So, just as a little reminder, have we got that from, yeah, maybe we don't actually. Session 4, yeah, no. Just a reminder in terms of how we are explaining those risks. So, when we are explaining audit risks, we need to remember the audit risk is a combination of the risk of material misstatement and detection risk. So we went through the model and we identified that auditors assess the risk of material misstatement. So you stare at your client, its business, its operations, and you try to assess the likelihood that their accounts will be wrong. And then detection risk, we manage. Because we want audit risk to be kept at a sensibly low figure. So if the risk of material misstatement is high, audit risk is going to be high unless you can make detection risk come down. How do we make detection risk come down? With our responses to the risk of material misstatement. So that is how it works. Okay. Well, if audit risk is going to be one of those bits oh dear. Right, guys, I did a question and answer session for a different exam paper right before I'm doing this session now on F8. And for the first few minutes there was a video problem, but then it solved itself. But we seem to have a problem. Okay, well guys, I don't know if you can see me or not, but I'm going to carry on and hope the problem is sorted out. Now I can hear you. I'm glad you can hear me. So it looks like some of you can and some of you are having a problem, which suggests it's not at this end, because otherwise everyone would have a problem. Anyway, I'm going to carry on because it's important that this gets recorded at the very least, and I'm rather hoping that things are going to sort themselves out. It does appear that some of you are okay and some are not. So let me carry on. So if we are explaining audit risks then, if we are explaining audit risks, if it's the risk of material misstatement, then you must explain your risk by talking about what is misstated. So say, which balance in the financial statements you think is at risk, why you think it's at risk. If you can mention the accounting standard that you think they're at risk of breaking, that would be great. And do you think it is over or understated? Okay, just to repeat, sorry guys, there seems to be some problems for some people, but not for all people. All I can do is carry on, so we have a recording. Detection risk. If you're explaining detection risk, your job is to explain why the auditor might struggle to spot the mistakes in the financial statements. So, just to repeat, if you are explaining audit risks, you must explain them in audit risk terminology, in audit risk style. If you don't do that, the chances are you are not going to get any of the marks. So, in terms of the question that we are looking at, I think the last thing we'd done last week, we were going through just the words, and you can see from the highlighting, in fact, that the last thing that we did last week is we talked about the extended credit. And we said that if your customers are struggling to pay, well, in terms of audit risk, that's receivables. So we said receivables are at risk of being overstated because they should be recorded at their recoverable value. And if customers are struggling to pay, surely there's a risk that some of those are bad debts. So notice the construction of what I've just said. Which balance? Receivables. Overstated, understated. Overstated is the risk. Why? Because it sounds like more customers are struggling to pay.